الله أكبر الله أكبر.
So today, we're diving into something pretty fascinating, a remarkable claim that the Quran, a text from the 7th century, actually contains a hidden mathematical structure. Now, just to be clear, our goal here isn't to prove or disprove anything. We're simply going to look directly at the patterns presented in our source materials and try to understand what they might mean.
And that leads us right to the big question, the one that kind of frames everything we're about to talk about. Could a book that's 1,400 years old really have a hidden mathematical code? I mean, it's a massive claim, right? And the evidence the proponents put forward is just as bold.
All right, so let's get right into it. The main argument here, the one from our sources, is that the numerical patterns we're about to look at are way more than just a simple coincidence.
You see, the core idea is that these aren't just random, interesting little facts. The people who study this argue these patterns are just too consistent, too precise to be an accident. They really see them as a deliberate, intelligent design that's woven right into the fabric of the text, almost like a kind of divine fingerprint.
And that brings us to the first major piece of evidence people point to. It's probably the most famous one, actually. It all revolves around a single number that just keeps popping up in some really surprising ways. Let's dig into this enigma of the number 19.
Just 19. That's it. So, according to the sources we've looked at, this one number is like a master key. It seems to unlock all these patterns throughout the Quran in some very specific and, deeply connected ways.
Okay, so here's how they break it down. And it's pretty interesting because the pattern shows up on different levels. You've got the micro level, the very first verse of the Quran, the Bismillah. It has exactly 19 Arabic letters. Simple enough. But then you zoom out, you look at the big picture, and the Quran has 114 chapters, or surahs. Well, that's a perfect multiple of 19. It's 19 times 6. And then there's another layer. The total number of verses is 6,346. And if you add up those digits, 6 plus 3 plus 4 plus 6, what do you get? Yep, 19.
So you can see why this gets people's attention. For proponents, the big deal isn't just that the number 19 shows up, it's how it shows up. Right at the beginning, in the overall structure, and even in the total verse count. They see this web of connections as a kind of divine coding, a mathematical signature that proves the text is protected and perfectly ordered.
But, okay, the whole thing doesn't just stop with one number. The next area that researchers look at is the Quran's structural balance, its symmetry, and its supposed use of what some people call divine proportions.
And this slide is a perfect example of what they mean. Take a look at Surah Al-Mulk. That's the 67th chapter. It's got 30 verses. Now, if you split that chapter right down the middle, something incredible happens. The first 15 verses have exactly 140 words. And the second 15 verses? You guessed it, exactly 140 words. It's this perfect mirror-like symmetry that's said to reflect the chapter's own message about the harmony and perfection in God's creation.
Now that idea of harmony brings us to another really cool concept, the golden ratio. If you're not familiar with it, don't worry. It's basically a special number, about 1.618, and it shows up everywhere in nature. We're talking the spiral of a seashell, the petals of a flower, even in famous art and architecture like the Parthenon. It's often called the divine proportion because our eyes just seem to find it perfectly balanced and beautiful.
So, what does this have to do with the Quran? Well, here's the connection. Proponents of these theories claim that this very same ratio is actually encoded into the Quran's structure. They point to things like the location of specific chapters or verses, and they argue that their position relative to the entire book lines up with this divine proportion. The idea is that this universal pattern of design is also embedded right there in the scripture.
All right, so we've talked about 19, we've talked about symmetry, but the analysis goes even deeper. Now we're going to shift focus to other important numbers that are said to pop up again and again, each one supposedly carrying its own symbolic meaning.
Let's kick things off with the number 7. I mean, this one's pretty well known. The Quran mentions 7 heavens and the 7 days of creation. But the claim goes further, digging into the language itself. As you can see right here, the Arabic word for 7, Saba, is apparently found 147 times in the text. And what's so special about 147? It's a perfect multiple of 7.
And it's not just 7. The number 8 gets highlighted too. For example, they point out that the opening chapter, Al-Fatiha, has 120 letters, which is a multiple of 8. Or in the famous story in Surah Al-Kahf, there are 8 companions.
Theologically, proponents connect this number to big concepts like eternity and the 8 gates of paradise, suggesting that all this numerical repetition is there to reinforce these core beliefs.
So after looking at all this stuff, the whole code of 19, the incredible symmetry, these recurring sacred numbers, we circle right back to where we started. We have to ask, is this all just a massive, mind-bending coincidence, or is it actual evidence of a deliberate, intelligent design?
Well, one of our sources, Adams, gives a pretty direct answer from the proponent's side of things. They say these aren't just statistical flukes. For them, these are powerful, intentional signs from a divine author. As they put it, they're powerful reminders of a higher order behind the universe.
And that really leaves us with one final big thought to chew on. As we take in all this information, the ultimate question really is one of interpretation, isn't it? Where exactly do we draw the line between a genuinely meaningful pattern that's embedded in a text and our own human minds, which are just hardwired to find patterns in everything we see? It's a fascinating question that sits right at the intersection of faith, mathematics, and our search for meaning.